Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pazza Podcast channel. My name is Travis. We are doing another Calcio Unheralded Legends episode, little subpath, if you will, of the Pazza Podcast, where I look into players of the 2000s Serie A era. Uh, Probably more specifically after the Calciopoli scandal. That's really when access to Serie A became pretty big in the States. And a lot of these people that you will hear me mention, players, they were players from this era that caught my eye, that were fun to watch, maybe had a crazy storyline that went through with them at the time as well. This week, though, we are switching that up a little bit. We're not going to do a player this week. We're going to do probably one of the most infamous characters in Serie A, probably for the last 50 or so years. He's definitely on a Mount Rushmore of insanity when it comes to Serie A, I would say. He ushered in an era to a club that's definitely got that cult status from the 2000s and 2000 teens Serie A Calcio era. Mr. Maurizio Zamparini, who was the owner and director of Palermo, the Sicilian side, famous for managers that they had brought through during this era, players that they had brought through during this era, and those pink kits that everyone knows and loves. This guy was the orchestrator and the potentially demise of this club. It's just a crazy, typical Serie A character that has made this league what it is and created a soap opera, if you will, for the people who really dive deep and love Calcio. So Maurizio Zamparini, he was born on the 9th of June, 1941. And there's a lot of Italian terms here that I'm going to probably struggle through. If I'm mispronouncing anything, please comment and let me know. But we're going to give it our best shot. He was born in 41 in Sevigliano, Italy, which is a part of the Bagnaria Arsa, Bagnari, Bagnaria Arsa, in the entity of Udine in the Friuli Venezia Giulia region. That was a lot of words right there for me. Hopefully, I didn't butcher them too bad. His first foray, Zamparini, into Italian football ownership came at just 46 years of age. He purchased the then, at the time, Serie C Due side Venezia. Almost immediately, he took this Venezia side and merged them with another C Due side, AC Mestre, in June of 1987. They changed their name for a little bit, but eventually it became what we know as today, Venezia again. This first season, they gained promotion to G1, and subsequently, they would also gain promotion eventually into Serie B in the 91-92 season. They would stay there for 7 seasons under the ownership of Zamparini until earning Serie A promotion in the 1998-1999 season. He did this alongside then sporting director for Venezia. He's now the current Inter president, Pepe Morata. So you'll see a pattern with anywhere Zamparini has gone or done. He has brought in people who left an impact on Serie A or are still impacting Serie A. I guess that goes to show he's got an eye for talent. He's got an eye for pulling the trigger, but he's also, as you'll see throughout this episode, he also has an eye for running them away. Zamparini would remain owner of Venezia for 4 seasons. They had relegation in the 99-2000 season, instantly got promoted the 2000-2001 season, and then another instant relegation back to Serie B for the 01-02 season. During his time at Venezia, he had managers such as Walter Novellino, Luciano Spalletti managed Venezia at this time, and Cesare Prandelli was another manager. These weren't all the managers, just some of note that stick out. He also was able to get players to Venezia such as Alvaro Recoba. He came in on loan from Inter, the Uruguayan. Igor Budan and Filippo Meniero. So some decently names there for Venezia, albeit Venezia wasn't and still, I guess you could say, isn't a huge club. He was able to gain two Serie A promotions in his time owning Venezia. After that last relegation, though, in the 2001-2002 season, I guess that was enough for Zamparini of being in Venezia. He put in a 15 million euro bid to purchase Palermo in the Sicilian side, and it was accepted. So on July 21st, 2002, Zamparini left Venezia to take over Palermo, who were also a Serie B team that time. But he stated that he had the intention of bringing them back to Serie A action. This is, for his Venezia time, I couldn't find too much craziness. He did go through some managers, but it wasn't anything crazy. But it was like almost instantly moving to Palermo was the start of his madness. A day after his appointment or his takeover of Palermo on July 22nd of 2002 was when this happened. There's a infamous incident that occurred called the Furto di Pergine, which means the theft of Pergine, an Italian little city town in the northern part of Italy. I think it said it was close to Trento, kind of like the Alps in that region of Italy. He sent a bus to go pick up 12 players and then Venezia manager. So these are 12 Venezia and their manager, Ezio Grelarin. I couldn't really figure out much or find much of him, but he had the bus go pick them up at the training center from Venezia, which is that Pergine, and bring them to where Palermo was having their training camp. So he essentially just abducted 13 players and staff from Venezia to bring to Palermo with him. And a couple of days later, the sporting director of Venezia at that time wasn't Morata, it was somebody else, also defected, if you will, to Palermo. So just the beginning of the craziness under Zamparini. They had to wait Palermo a season to gain promotion to Serie A under Zamparini. But for the 03-04 season, they would be able to finally be in Serie A after a 31-year drought. So they got in. I think they finished third in the 02-03 season and won through the playoff, and were one of the teams to gain promotion to Serie A for the 03-04 season. They finished their first season in top flight football in sixth place. Pretty impressive. They would also gain qualification to the UEFA Cup for their season of 03-04. This season also had Luca Toni playing up top for Palermo, and he had 20 goals that season. So the first name, I guess, of Palermo players that you will hear from me and that you will definitely know because of their impact in Serie A and with international football. There's a lot of names that came through Palermo under Zamparini. The 05-06 season, though, Palermo would finish fifth. And again, they would qualify for the UEFA Cup, which is now Europa League. Uh, they finished fifth. They weren't in the fifth position, but due to Calciopoli and all the fines and everything, they did finish fifth that season. And then in the 06-07 season, they also finished fifth. Also in the 09-2010 season. So Zamparini, early on at Palermo, definitely had success, and it was continued success. It was consistent from the 03-04 season to the 09-2010 season. That's four top six finishes, never above five, but still, that's impressive for Palermo, a Sicilian side, let alone mainly a lot of southern Italian sides. Uh, to have that kind of 5-6 year stretch of success is very impressive. They had a couple eighth place finishes as well, and then a 16th place finish eventually in the 2011-2012 season. That would kind of foreshadow the next season where they would become relegated, finishing 19th place in the 2012-2013 season. They would win Serie B the next season and gain instant promotion, which anytime Zamparini is the president, it seems like instant promotion from Serie B after a relegation from Serie A is bound to happen. They lasted in Serie A for 2 seasons. They finished 11th and 16th, respectively, and then another relegation to Serie B in the 2016-2017 season. In the 2017 season, that same season they had relegation or were relegated. Zamparini had agreed to sell Palermo, and he stepped down on February 27th, 2017. But after a handful of offers that he eventually had rejected, Zamparini would take back over Palermo on July of 2017. So I don't know who actively was running the club day to day at that time. It probably was still Zamparini, but there was 7 months there where there was uncertainty under Palermo and the ownership. He would officially, though, let go or relinquish his control of Palermo on November 22nd, 2018. So he regained it back for another almost year and a half. He leaves, and we'll get a little bit into his legacy, but the ending of Zamparini's tenure as owner, that craziness, madness of 6 months, 7 months of uncertainty, taking back over the club, then selling it again, really just highlights and sums up all of Zamparini during his time at Palermo. So that brings me to the real reason, because as of now, there's been a little bit of craziness, but nothing too insane that I've mentioned for Zamparini. Brings me now to why I chose Zamparini and kind of what his madness and what he did during this time that really shines a light on Serie A and Italian culture, I guess, during this time. He came in this era that he really was prosperous and very outgoing and boisterous was an era of Italian football, Calcio, Serie A, where majority of the owners were Italian owners. We saw them in the press giving crazy snippets and quotes. It seemed like week in and week out if you were following. For me in the States, I was having to get all this from like gold.com on my desktop computer that all my family shared. These people, luckily, we had at that time people that translated these Italian quotes. And as a 12, 11-year old kid reading all this stuff, it was just, you put the storylines together and it created a narrative of Serie A and Italian culture and everything that was almost seductive, how crazy and loud and it seemed unrealistic being American and how we portray sports or like to try to think we portray sports owners and figures. If we think that George Steinbrenner and Jerry Jones are crazy here in the States, they had nothing on the Italian owners at the time here. We had Silvio Berlusconi, Milan's owner president, Massimo Moratti, Inter's longtime owner, Aurelio De Laurentiis, the Napoli, still current owner. He was coming prominent at that time. He had a very good soundbite that I remember was all over. I think Napoli was playing maybe a Premier League team, or he was upset that Premier League was poaching all of Serie A talent at the time. But he came out and said that my players shouldn't move, or nobody should want to move to England from Serie A. It's kind of what he's referring. He said, "My players, nobody should want to move to England because the English women don't shave or wash their genitalia." I'm kind of butchered the quote there a little bit, but yeah, he really came out to the press and said that. That's kind of the figures we're dealing with. Luciano Moggi, the Juve director, who pretty much was the figure of the Calciopoli scandal, and then somebody who I guess, during this research found Perugia director, owner, whatever, Luciano Gauci was a pretty crazy figure as well. And then, this we still have it today. He was during this time as well. He's still going strong with De Laurentiis, but Lazio owner Claudio Lotito. If you want some bit of entertainment, look up the drama going on right now between Lotito and Lazio's Eagle handler, who posted a picture of his penis after a penile implant surgery. This is shit that happens in Serie A that you literally cannot make up, and that's what makes it such a great league. But yeah, if you want a bit of humor after this, look up Lotito and his drama with the Eagle handler after that uh, dick pic that he uploaded. It's classic. Um, but Zamparini, during his time as owner of Palermo, had 40 different coaching changes in 15 years as owner. And this also consisted of 29 different coaches being changed in or changed out. Some got rehired multiple times as kind of like a Steinbrenner for the Yankees esque owner. Zamparini had no problems firing coaches on a dime. Some of these managers, we had pretty big managers that came through. We've already mentioned Prandelli and Spalletti with Venezia. At Palermo, he had Francesco Guidalin, Luigi Del Neri, Davide Ballardini, Walter Senga, the Inter goalkeeper, long time. Delio Rossi, twice. Ballardini was three times. Circe Cosmi, if you've ever watched some Serie A and seen a guy with a little hat and a goatee on the sideline, sometimes wearing, I feel like he also wore some skinny jeans. Quite the character. Stefano Pioli, the Scudetto winning Milan manager from a couple years back. This was an interesting one with Pioli. He hired him in the offseason for Palermo, and then he fired Pioli before the season even started because he had a feeling that he was going to get them, being Palermo, relegated. So the feeling had him fire Stefano Pioli before he even managed a match for Palermo. Gianpiero Gasparini was there. Gattuso, one of his first coaching roles was for Palermo. Beppe Acchini, the another guy wearing a hat all the time on the sideline. Walter Novellino again at Palermo. Roberto De Zerbi, the now Marseille manager. Brighton manager formerly. Sassuolo, longtime manager. And then he also brought back a player of his, Uruguayan defender Diego Lopez, to be a manager. I think that might have been the last manager during his 2017 debacle of giving up control of the club. He's also probably more famously known for his antics and quotes with the media. He didn't have a problem sending messages to his squad, the coaches that he had hired, fans, opposition, etc., through the press. He used the press, wasn't afraid to give soundbites and quotes to really. I don't know. We saw this with Monza director Galliani recently, where he posted notes all over the locker room and everything, saying, "If you're not going to be with Monza for the rest of the season, let me know. I will make sure you're sold so we can have people who are only on board around." That's is also a big thing. You got to make sure you motivate people, but I think it's kind of corny whenever you have media that come in and take pictures of that and post it in the papers and all over social media. That kind of makes it lose its validity. Zamparini would go straight to the press and give them sound bites. He didn't give two shits. That's kind of another reason and what makes him so iconic during this era. In 2003, he proclaimed that he would cut off their testicles. Here's the quote, cut off their testicles and eat them in a salad. Eat them in my salad, referring to Palermo players after a bad performance in Serie B. Uh, Here's another famous quote, I didn't mean to offend Adrian Mutu when I called him a crafty little gypsy after Mutu scored for Fiorentina when a Palermo player was apparently down injured. Just absolute craziness to pretty much saying, I know what I did was wrong. I didn't care anyway. But saying the opposite, the mind games of Zamparini and the you never could tell if he actually meant what he was saying or not. I feel like he probably did mean it. Here's another quote. Begin quote. This is not a group of men, it's a team of girls. This was in 2008 after a bad stretch of games for Palermo. Another one would be the English are pirates. This was kind of like De Laurentiis saying, don't go to England. The English women don't wash their genitalia. He was calling out the English. This was really the beginning of the EPL investment where they're tripling and quadrupling total spend of everyone else. These teams are doubling the spends. Singular teams in Premier League are doubling spend of all of Serie A as a whole, and they were poaching Italian talent, Serie A talent, and he called them out. He said they're pirates. Never one to beat around the bush, Zamparini. Another famous one after a 2-2 draw against Treviso in 2005. He said about the players to the media, if it was up to me, I would not pay them no more. So, acknowledging that he has to, being the owner of Palermo, he has to pay them. He said if it was up to him, though, he wouldn't pay them. Classic. And then, what another one famous one in 2011, there was a goal by Alessandro Matri for Cagliari against Palermo that apparently was clearly offsides. I haven't gone and looked at this to see, but everything that I read said that it was clearly offside. Palermo ended up losing 3-1 against Cagliari that game, and Zamparini came out into the press and said we should put all referees in prison. So sure, he gained some notoriety after that one as well, but he also probably gained some fines from the Lega at that time as well. And then there's a trio of quotes surrounding Palermo manager, one of the more famous managers for Palermo fans during the Zamparini era. They really took to Delio Rossi, and some funny quotes during his time as manager when Zamparini was president. Some famous Zamparini quotes. First one is in December of 2009, Palermo have a coach with no balls. This was after 10 man Palermo managed. They were down to one man for 60 minutes in this match from the reports to Bari. They lost one or tied 1-1, and Zamparini was not happy. He called Delio Rossi a coach with no balls. And then shortly after in 2010, he came out again after a 7-0 loss to Udinese. Said about Delio Rossi. Rossi has a 1% chance of staying on the bench. You can bet on that. The team has been completely destroyed. He ruined my Palermo. I should have kicked Rossi out at Christmas. So I'm guessing he's referring to after that 1-1 draw to Bari. He would then, shortly after that quote, fire Delio Rossi, but that only lasted for 5 weeks. He 5 weeks later rehired Delio Rossi and came out to the media and apologized. Said, begin quote, changing coaches was a mistake on my part for which I ask Palermo fans to forgive me. I rediscovered my belief in Rossi because he is an excellent coach. So Delio Rossi, I don't know. For me, if someone fired me and then 5 weeks later tried to come back and apologize, he's a bigger man than I am, I guess. So hats off to Delio Rossi dealing with Zamparini's madness, not once, but twice. And that's kind of the legacy. We're going to wrap things up. I think the legacy for Zamparini is that craziness, the quotes, the hiring, firing of managers, the sustained success early on for Palermo really brought Palermo to what we know now as that cult Italian club that people love, kind of romanticize about that those 2000s, 2010s Palermo teams. They were great, fun to watch, some great players. He's known for the managers and his interaction with his managers, but he's also, more importantly, I think, known for bringing in legendary players that we all know. And I'm going to go through a list of players that it's going to be a long list, but these lists of players that, if you're a fan of Serie A during this time and just a fan of great football, you'll recognize a lot of these names. First and foremost, of course, number one player that we'll always remember with Palermo was Fabrizio Micoli, the short, tiny player that seemed a lot bigger on the field when he played. He played big. He was a superstar. Always won for the fantastic skill and goals that not many players could bring to the table. He stayed with Palermo for forever. Micoli, an icon. We have other players, though, at this era. Luca Toni, Andrea Barzagli, Cristian Zaccardo, Simone Barone, Fabio Grosso. All these players won the '06 World Cup. They were all Palermo players. Other Italian player, Alessandro Diamanti, came from Palermo. One of the more famous ones, Argentinian Javier Pastore, another huge player coming through as well. Uruguayan Edison Cavani, one of my favorite strikers, Cavani. He's top class, just an all around great striker. Uh, Another Italian left back, long hair, really fun to watch during this era. Federico Bazzaretti ended up going to Roma after Palermo. One of I think everyone's one of their most favorite players. Huge cult icon legend, known really for his time at Palermo and his time at Atalanta. Josip Ilicic, just an all-around class left foot. I get goosebumps thinking about Ilicic. He was great. Another one that everyone loves. I am a little down on him just because he ended up going to Juve and having success there, but no doubt denying his class. Paulo Dybala, the Argentinian. Amari, eventually Amauri, if that's how we're pronouncing it, eventually going to Juve as well, the long-haired striker. I think he was Brazilian, but nationalized to Italy. Goalkeeper Stefano Sorrentino, another Uruguayan, Abel Hernandez. He was one of those that everyone said was going to become the next big thing and never really hit those heights. He was a decent player, decent striker, though. Brazilian Fabio Simplicio, midfielder, hardworking, just him in that pink jersey is pretty iconic. Simon Kjaer, I think he's still currently, he might have retired, I don't know, at Milan, longtime Denmark international, really great player. During his time at Palermo, people don't realize this. He was a great free kick taker. I don't really remember seeing him take too many free kicks with Milan, but I remember he pulled a couple out of his bag. I believe one against Inter in that 09-2010 season. Simon Kjaer, great free kick taker. Wish he would have kept doing that. Matteo Darmian, current Inter player. Salvatore Sirigu, goalkeeper, Italy international. And guys, I said this is a long list. I'm over half, but Mattia Cassani, Mark Bresciano, the Australian with the Italian name, as I always like to call him, bald headed, great midfielder. Another Italian international goalkeeper, Marco Emilia. Gilardino came through there. Antonio Nacarino was also coming there. Current Chelsea manager, Enzo Maresca. Fabio Liverani. Franco Vasquez. That's kind of the players that came through Palermo under Zamparini. Guys, let me know if I missed anyone specifically. I couldn't get everybody on there. If you have a good shout of someone from Palermo that you really enjoyed watching, comment on here. Let me know. The list could be endless, honestly. And that's, in my opinion, other than the craziness, what I'll always remember Zamparini for is bringing this talent to Serie A and really showcasing and having a good, competitive lower squad that always gave the big boys trouble and wasn't afraid to go to the press if he had to as well. So, guys, this is going to wrap it up for this episode of the Calcio Unheralded Legends. We'll be back next week with an actual player again, but just wanted to do something different. Please like and subscribe. Last video was pretty huge for me. The reaction to the 3-1 win for Impoli. So, trying to build on that. Really appreciate all the support, guys. And as always, Forza Inter.